This is a video series meant to help you get really clear on what is holding you back from living the life that you want. I'm Ivana Robinson, life and leadership coach. I help people to own what it is they really want and give fewer fucks about what others think about it. I'm also the co-host of Reclaim the Retreat.
And I'm Adelia Abora-Shade, the other co-host of Reclaim the Retreat. I'm also a financial confidence coach who tries to demystify travel, money, and everything in between to help women like you live life on their terms.
I love it. What are we talking about today?
Today, we are still making progress on how we can transform our lives so that 1 year from now, it can be more fulfilling, more happy, what have you. And I think it's important for us to talk today about the importance of taking small steps.
Yes, definitely. Transformation does not have to be drastic in order to be impactful. I think we often think we got to do something big or it doesn't count. You know, you and I both did some fairly drastic things to change our lives.
We talk because we often talk about blowing up our lives, and that sounds very dramatic.
Yes.
But in reality, there were a lot of small steps, small actions that we did that ended up getting us a very different life.
Yes. And it is important to not just recognize that and making space for it, but to celebrate those things. Because it's less about how big the steps are that you're taking, it's how consistent you are. Are you moving in the general direction of where it is you are trying to go, where it is you're trying to be, as opposed to, are you getting there tomorrow? Okay. Yeah, it is common, I know in my work as a coach, for us to disregard or lessen maybe the things that it is we are doing in our lives. This end of year, I have a lot of clients going through like performance evaluations, and they're very much like, I didn't even do anything. And as we kind of talk about it, it's like, no, you did a lot of things. It is maybe not some grand, flashy, social media worthy event, but you are definitely not the same person that you were this time last year, and you have learned a lot and accomplished a lot. On the maybe it's not as big on the rubric you're using.
We are often our worst critics.
100%.
We're often the people that give ourselves the least amount of credit. And often it takes somebody else to say, oh, wow, you're so different now. You did this thing, because we're too close to it to acknowledge the work we have done.
Yes. Yes, like I mentioned earlier, it's small, it's consistent, right? It doesn't actually matter how big the changes are that you've been consistent. I often find that people, we put, we're making our little to-do list, right? We're going to put the big thing on the list, right? I'm going to move abroad. I am going to get the promotion.
I'm going to learn Spanish.
Yes. And the thing is, you can't just check that off, right? That's not something you can just cross off the list real quick. There are so many pieces to that puzzle. And so let's break this down, right, to what is really the thing, because making the list of all the things that maybe go into that is an accomplishment. Deciding to learn Spanish, deciding that you want to go somewhere, like making a decision, that is part of the process.
Yes.
Scheduling time to, talk to people, to go to a class, to even think about what it is that you want. You being here with us, that is a thing that you get to check off, that you get to feel proud of, that in combination is part of the big actions, the big outcomes.
I don't think making a list gets the credit it is due, because you can't get where you're going if you don't have a plan. You don't know I have it.
Milestones?
Milestones, yes. Yes, and I was thinking when you were talking, I was thinking about, I know we hate SMART goals, but there's a reason, there's a reason everybody and their mama talk about SMART goals, because like I have the goal of learning Spanish. How do you measure? Because remember, SMART goals have to be
specific, measurable, achievable,
time bound, okay? Right?
We're forgetting R.
Oh, what is R?
Realistic.
Realistic. Like, I can't learn Spanish in a week. That is, although it's time bound, that is not realistic. But that measurable piece, like if I just put on my list, learn Spanish, how do I know I have so that I can get the check?
Mm-hmm.
So, this is why I think making a list is so powerful, because it helps you move away from that big thing. Because one, putting the big thing on the list,
it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming, and all you end up doing is just ignoring it.
It gets moved to the next thing.
Because you're like, don't know what I'm supposed to do here. So this is why I love making a list. Like, you get to break down like all of the things that are in that. And as you take a little small step, you get to cross things off.
Mm-hmm.
And that also serves as a way for you to see how much progress you've made.
Yes. Yes.
When you get that feeling of, oh, I'm not getting any closer to this thing I want to do, well, look at your list.
Right. How are you measuring this? Are the things on your list you can simply cross off? You know, you have the example of learning Spanish. Learn Spanish is not a goal. It's not, you know, but like when you make that list, it's figuring out, like when you say learn Spanish, is that speaking? Is that reading? Is that writing? Listening? Like, what does that mean?
What does that mean? Because it doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. Like, I really want to be able to speak more freely and understand, although my comprehension is pretty good, but I would like to not have that moment where it's turning in my brain and they're like, oh, do you need to speak English?
Yeah.
I'd like to not have that. So that's a far more specific thing, and probably an easier thing to measure or gauge my progress on versus learn Spanish. I have no interest in being able to read, you know, research text in Spanish. Like, I don't want that.
Right. But, you know, the occasional newspaper article.
A recipe maybe.
Yeah.
You know, things like that.
Yes.
Okay. So I would break down like how I want to be able to perform in Spanish. I might also break down and put on the list, what are some ways, because if I want to speak more, that means I have to find more opportunities to speak Spanish. So does that mean I'm going to go to the mercado instead of the grocery store?
Yeah, where you have to interact with people to buy things. Yes.
Yes. You know, or if I want to practice my comprehension, that might be finding 3 shows on Netflix and deciding, okay, how often am I going to engage with that content?
Yes, but those are also multiple steps.
Yes.
Right? Like step 1 is, let me just flip through Netflix Spanish things and find some things that seem interesting to me. Like, that is an easy thing. Find shows to watch.
Yes.
Cross that off. To your point about like, okay, when am I going to watch them?
That's a separate thing.
That's a separate thing, right? If you're putting that on your calendar, I personally live and die by my calendar. So if there's something I know and I want to make happen, it has to be on the calendar, or it
doesn't happen.
So, you know, taking the time to schedule that is a task that you can cross off.
I think I'd need to find some tools, whether that's books, apps, websites, whatever, but I need to find time to do the research, to find those tools that I could use to help improve my Spanish.
Yes.
That's probably got to go on my calendar too. I would need to find a class
Okay.
to learn, or more like formal instruction.
Yeah. Learn the grammar and the
Yes.
tenses and the things like that. Okay.
Because the way my brain works, I need to know that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
or my brain rejects new knowledge that's not grounded in something else.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's fair enough. And then I think it's also knowing, like, are you someone who prefers to learn, online? Like, can you do an online class? Can it be a self-directed class versus do you need like the accountability of a live teacher in a certain time? Do you need to be out of your home environment? Do you need a live class
And so these are all things that would go on my list. Decide whether in person or online works best for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we say break it down into small steps, that is exactly the kind of thing we're talking about.
How do you stay motivated as you're, those times when I think you feel like you're not making progress, right? Like I wake up today, I'm still going to that job. I didn't say the thing in Spanish. I thought that conversation did not go the way I thought it was going to go, or I definitely knew that vocab and it just didn't come to me in a moment.
To stay motivated, particularly it's an issue, like you said, when you're feeling like you aren't. But let's be real. We're not the most reliable narrator.
No.
And so I was talking about this a little earlier. We're often too close to the situation to be able to accurately say, I'm not making progress.
Mm-hmm.
And so one, that's where I'm gonna start. Is this coming from an accurate place, or is this more about me feeling frustrated?
Yeah. That
I'm not progressing at, I don't know whose speed I'm supposed to be progressing at.
Yeah.
But I would go back and I'd give myself credit for the things that I've done. This is again, I think the list comes in handy. I've got this massive list. How many of those things have I checked off? How many of those things have I actually done, but I forgot to go back and check them off?
Mm-hmm.
Now that I've done that, I've done quite a few things here. I've made some progress.
Yes.
That
very much reminds me of, it was like an early episode of The Cosby Show, and Rudy was upset that like she's too small. Like they just kept saying, you can't do this, you can't do that because you're too small, you're too little, you're too young. And Claire basically has like a heart to heart with her and was like, there's so many things that you can do now at 5 that you couldn't do at 4. And has her start naming things like, you didn't know how to tie your shoes last year, you didn't know how to ride a bike last year. Like there's a lot of things that you can do. And I think we have to be Rudy at this. We have to try and find those little things, because there's always going to be something that you haven't or can't or not yet. But what have you done? And so it's probably a lot more than you think.
Yeah. So like with Spanish, because like you said, I was in the moment and the word didn't come to me, and it's not until I'm home and then I'm like, oh damn, that's the way I should have conjugated the thing. And I do feel bad about that, but I have to catch myself and think about, okay, what are the things I now understand that I didn't understand before in Spanish? Mm-hmm. Like, more easily being able to pick the right past tense. Mm-hmm. I can do that now. My brain still has to pause and translate, but like I'm much faster when it comes to those other tenses. So yeah. I would also say go back and revisit your list of small steps. It's very likely you still have some things on there that are too big, that really should be broken down into multiple things. Mm-hmm. Because that's a hard thing to unlearn. It's a hard habit to break. Mm-hmm. And also, we are always focused on the outcome. We are not encouraged to spend a lot of time to think about the process and what are the pieces and all of the things that go into us getting there.
Yeah.
So I would say revisit your list of small steps.
Yeah, I argue if it is not something that you can easily like do a thing and cross it off, it is probably too big. If it involves, I don't know, following up or is a multi-step process, then those should be separate steps.
If you are still feeling unmotivated or discouraged at your lack of progress, do your people know what you're trying to do? The folks in your circle, do they know? Because I know we often be trying to move in silence, but we gotta let that go.
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. Because ultimately your circle, your people, your community, they can't support you if they don't know what or how you need support. There's a level of even maybe accountability that comes with having shared those goals, and maybe you don't know, maybe there's someone else who's like, oh, I also want to learn Spanish. I've been kind of nervous to take a class by myself, but maybe we can go and find one that works. We can go together. You know what I mean? We talk a lot about like community or like support systems, but it's like, are you leaning into that? Right? We love to be the helper, but the important part of community is that it is a circle. You have to also ask for help and allow them to help and support you.
Go back, revisit your calendar. Have you been ignoring the things that you've set on your calendar? Maybe you got a little overzealous and you were like, I am going to practice Spanish 1 hour a day, 7 days a week. That is not realistic.
That's another thing. Definitely set a low bar.
Set a low bar.
Like, we don't have to go from 0 to 100. We gotta just be able to step over it.
Yeah. And then you can raise the bar later. And then I think we have to be honest with ourselves that sometimes it's the experience.
Mm-hmm.
That, again, we often focus too much on the end and not the process. And so we get down on ourselves about, well, I'm not here yet, instead of enjoying, acknowledging, experiencing the process.
Yeah, the growth. Here's what I know now that I did not know before. And there is value in that, and you should celebrate that, even if you don't know all the things just yet. So with that being said, we want to ask you to share a small win. We want to celebrate with you. So what is it we're celebrating? Adelia, do you got a small win you want to share?
Yes. For nearly 3 years, I have been talking about getting in more health insurance coverage. And you know what? I did everything wrong. Like we said, I put on the list, get health insurance. And then it was too big and I just never did it. So I took a step. I got a quote and I actually printed off the paperwork.
Okay. Yeah. Because we don't own a printer, so that is that is one step. Go to the print shop.
Yay me. What about you?
I was looking back, getting into some organized movement again, and so I reached out to a gym not too far from here on WhatsApp to get more info on their classes and offerings.
Yeah,
that was my big thing. So.
Okay. So we're making progress.
We're making things happen. So what are you making happen? Write it in the comments below.
Let us know. We want to celebrate you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. If you know someone who could benefit from this conversation, feel free to share the video with them. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, what are you doing? What are you waiting on? All this good stuff. And there's more good stuff on our mailing list. Are you on it?
Reclaimtheretreat.com. We're waiting for you.